You're standing at the edge. Maybe it's a balcony, maybe it's a cliff. Maybe it's the observation deck of a tall building. Tourists around you taking photos, laughing. The view is beautiful, breathtaking even. And then you feel it. Not a desire exactly, not a plan, but a pull. A thought that appears in your mind unbidden, unwanted. What if I just jumped? Your heart races. You step back from the edge, disturbed, confused. Why did I think that? I'm not suicidal. I don't want to die. So why did my brain just suggest I throw myself off this building? You look around, worried someone might have read your mind. You feel broken, wrong, like there's something dark inside you that you can't control. But here's what you don't know. You're not broken. You're not crazy, and you're definitely not alone. What you just experienced has a name. The French call it LAppelDuVide, the call of the void. And I need to tell you something right now, before we go any further. This isn't about suicide. This isn't depression. This is something else entirely. Something stranger. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been driving on a highway and suddenly thought, I could just swerve into oncoming traffic? Or held a knife in the kitchen and had the flash? What if I just hurt myself with this? Or stood on a subway platform as the train approached and felt an inexplicable urge to step forward? If you have, you're in good company. Studies show that approximately 50% of people have experienced what we call high place phenomenon, that intrusive thought about jumping from heights. Half of all people. And it's not just heights. These intrusive thoughts can take many forms. You're holding a baby and suddenly you imagine dropping it. You're in a peaceful moment and you visualize doing something violent or shocking. You're safe in bed and you think about all the ways you could die right now. These are called intrusive thoughts, and they're one of the most common and most disturbing experiences of the human mind. Research from Harvard Medical School found that 94% of people experience unwanted intrusive thoughts. These thoughts often involve themes of harm, death, or taboo subjects. They appear suddenly, without warning. They cause distress precisely because they contradict your actual values and desires. But here's what's crucial to understand. Having the thought does not mean you want to do it. Having the thought does not mean you want to do it. Your brain isn't revealing a hidden suicidal desire. It's not exposing some dark secret part of you that wants to die. It's doing something much more interesting, and honestly much stranger. So what's actually happening in your brain when you stand at the edge of a cliff and think about jumping? Let me introduce you to a concept, the survival paradox. Your brain's primary job is to keep you alive. Everything it does, every thought, every reaction, every impulse, is filtered through the question, will this help me survive? And one of the ways your brain keeps you safe is by constantly scanning for danger. When you stand at the edge of something high, your brain goes, danger, height, fall, death, must stay safe. Your balance system recalibrates, your muscles tense. You become hyper-aware of the edge. This is your amygdala, your threat detection center, doing its job. But then, something strange happens. Your brain generates a split-second simulation of the dangerous thing. It shows you, in vivid detail, what would happen if you stepped off that edge. Not because you want to do it, but because your brain is testing the scenario. Think of it like this. Your brain is running a disaster drill. Okay, if we fell, that would be very bad. Let me show you exactly how bad. So you stay far away from this edge. But here's where it gets complicated. Your conscious mind receives this simulation, this vivid image of jumping, and misinterprets it. Your consciousness doesn't get the memo that this was a warning. It just receives the thought, jump. And then you think, wait, why did I just think that? Do I want to jump? This is called a cognitive mismatch. Your unconscious mind was trying to protect you by showing you the danger. But your conscious mind interpreted it as an impulse or desire. Let me give you another example to make this clearer. You're holding a baby. Precious, fragile, dependent on you. Your brain goes, danger, baby is vulnerable, drop, shots, catastrophic. Must be very, very careful. And to emphasize how careful you need to be, your brain shows you this is what would happen if you drop the baby. Not because you want to drop the baby, but because your brain is saying, here is the worst case scenario. Do not let this happen. But your conscious mind receives this image and recoils. Oh my God, why did I imagine dropping the baby? Am I a monster? Can I trust myself? You're not a monster. Your brain is just really, really bad at internal communication. There's another theory that complements this. Some researchers believe the call of the void is your brain's way of affirming your will to live. By presenting you with the option, the possibility of death, and then watching you recoil from it. Your brain is confirming, okay, good, we don't want that, we want to live. Message received. It's almost like your brain is checking in. Hey, just making sure we're still doing this living thing, right? Yeah? Cool, just checking. But whether it's a cognitive mismatch or an existential check-in, the result is the same, a deeply unsettling moment where you question yourself, where you wonder if you can trust your own mind. This phenomenon has haunted humanity for centuries. Writers, philosophers, artists, they've all grappled with it. Let me tell you about Edgar Allan Poe. In 1845, Poe wrote an essay called The Imp of the Perverse. In it, he describes an experience that will sound very familiar. He talks about standing at the edge of a precipice, looking down into the abyss, and feeling an inexplicable urge, not a desire but a compulsion, to jump. He describes it as a perverse impulse, something that goes against all reason, all self-preservation, all logic. But Poe understood something crucial. This wasn't about wanting to die. It was about the terrifying freedom of realizing you could. He called it the imp of the perverse, this little demon in your mind that whispers, you know, you could just do it. Nothing is stopping you. Dostoevsky explored this too in Crime and Punishment. The protagonist, Raskolnikov, stands on the edge of a canal thinking about throwing himself in. Not because he wants to die, but because he's testing himself, testing his freedom, testing his control. Freud had a term for this kind of impulse, Thanatos. The death drive. He believed that alongside our instinct for life, eros, we have a parallel instinct. Toward death, toward destruction, toward returning to an inorganic state. Now, modern psychology has largely moved away from Freud's death drive theory. It's not well supported by evidence. But what Freud was observing, these intrusive thoughts about death and destruction, that part was real. He just misinterpreted what they meant. And then there's the existentialists. Jean-Paul Sartre talked about radical freedom, the terrifying realization that at any moment, you could make any choice. Standing at the edge of a building, you become acutely aware. Nothing is forcing you to step back. You could step forward. And this freedom, this absolute, ungoverned freedom, is horrifying. Because it means you are entirely responsible for choosing to live, moment by moment. The call of the void in this view is the vertigo of freedom. The dizzying awareness that you are radically free and that your continued existence is a choice you're making, constantly. Now, the call of the void is just one type of intrusive thought. And I want to talk about the broader landscape of these thoughts because understanding this will help you understand your own mind better. Intrusive thoughts exist on a spectrum. On one end, mild, fleeting thoughts that you barely notice. I could throw my phone in this fountain. Weird thought, anyway. On the other end, severe, distressing thoughts that appear frequently and cause significant anxiety. This is where we get into OCD territory, obsessive-compulsive disorder. Here's the key difference. Normal intrusive thoughts appear occasionally. You recognize them as just thoughts. You don't take them seriously. They don't significantly impact your behavior. You can dismiss them relatively easily. OCD intrusive thoughts appear constantly, sometimes hundreds of times a day. You struggle to recognize them as just thoughts. You feel compelled to do rituals to prevent the thoughts from coming true. They severely impact your quality of life. You cannot easily dismiss them. So if you've stood on a balcony and had a flash of, "What if I jumped?" and then stepped back and went about your day, that's normal. If you avoid all balconies, all heights, all sharp objects, because the thoughts are so intense and persistent that you don't trust yourself, that might be OCD, and you should talk to a mental health professional. But for most people, these thoughts are occasional visitors. Unwelcome, unsettling, but temporary. Let me tell you about the white bear problem. Right now, for the next 30 seconds, I want you to try very hard not to think about a white bear. Don't picture a white bear. Don't imagine its fur, its eyes, its size. Whatever you do, do not think about a white bear. You're thinking about a white bear, aren't you? This is a famous psychological experiment. The harder you try to suppress a thought, the more that thought appears. This is called ironic process theory, or thought suppression rebound. So when you have an intrusive thought about jumping, and you think, "Oh my God, that's horrible. I need to not think about that," what happens? You think about it more. The intrusive thought about jumping becomes, "Don't jump, don't jump, don't jump." But your brain just hears, "Jump, jump, jump." This is why the most effective approach to intrusive thoughts is not to fight them or suppress them. It's to acknowledge them, recognize them as just thoughts, and let them pass. Oh, there's that thought again. Interesting. My brain is doing its weird thing. Cool, moving on. The thought doesn't define you. The thought doesn't predict your behavior. The thought is just neural noise. Uncomfortable neural noise, yes, but noise nonetheless. So now you know what the call of the void is. You know you're not alone. You know you're not broken. You know your brain is just being a brain. But how do you actually live with this? First, normalize it. These thoughts are common. They're normal. They don't mean anything about you as a person. Every time one appears, remind yourself, this is a normal brain thing. My brain is checking for danger. I'm okay. Second, don't engage. When the thought appears, don't start a whole internal debate about what it means. Don't spiral into, "Why did I think that? Am I secretly suicidal? Can I trust myself? What's wrong with me?" Just note it and move on. Treat intrusive thoughts like spam email. You wouldn't open spam email and carefully read it and analyze what it says about you. You just, "Oh, spam, delete, moving on." Third, understand the difference between thought and intent. Having a thought is not the same as wanting to act on it. Your mind generates thousands of thoughts per day. Most of them are random, meaningless, or bizarre. You don't act on most of your thoughts. You won't act on this one either. Fourth, know when to seek help. If intrusive thoughts are happening constantly, severely impacting your quality of life, making you avoid places or activities, coming with compulsions or rituals, making you genuinely question your safety, then you should talk to a mental health professional, specifically someone trained in OCD or anxiety disorders. The gold standard treatment is exposure and response prevention, a type of cognitive behavioral therapy. And it works really well. There's also acceptance and commitment therapy, which teaches you to observe your thoughts without judgment, recognize them as transient mental events, and commit to actions aligned with your values, regardless of what thoughts show up. But for most people, these thoughts are just an occasional weird quirk of being human. Disturbing? Yes. Meaningful? Not really. Here's what I want you to take away from this video. If you've ever stood at the edge of something high and felt that pull, that whisper, what if you jumped? You're not broken. You're not secretly suicidal. You're not losing control. Your brain is doing what brains do, scanning for danger, running simulations, checking in on your will to live. It's clumsy, it's unsettling, but it's normal. The call of the void is not a call you have to answer. It's just noise, static, a glitch in the system. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who observes them, acknowledges them, and chooses what to do next. And you can choose to step back from the edge, again and again, and